This article is by Newsweek. It is titled Landlord's Reason for Evicting Family with Terminally Ill Child Dragged. It was published on January 17th, 2023. The author is Lucy Noter Antonio. She's a senior life and trends reporter. A link to this article will be attached in the description box. Thanks for being here with me this Monday evening. No parent wants to think about their child dying before them, but this family has been told their 5-year-old son has a terminal illness. And to add to the stress, a landlord has given them a few months to move out of their home. In a now viral post, the poster explained that he inherited the house 11 years ago and a family has rented the property for 5 years. But recently, a buyer has given him an offer he cannot refuse. So he has decided to sell the house. However, the family has pleaded for more time as they haven't got the funds or time to move out. Redditors are outraged by the 47-year-old landlord's post, but Mia Sophia Mel, the owner of a real estate brokerage firm, has backed the original poster, meaning she has backed the landlord. All right. This could be a very sensitive topic for some people. I'm only going to give you the only opinion I can give, and that is my opinion. And if I still have a channel afterwards, I'll be here tomorrow as well. Now, we have a situation where, as we know, the family has a child who is dying. And I think it says later in the article, he's got like 1 to 2 months to live. And I guess the landlord puts up this post and says, hey, I can sell the house that they're renting. He's got a chance to buy it for some extra money. And I think it'll say later how much he's got the chance to buy it. And apparently Redditors are just absolutely mad at the landlord going, I can't believe you're going to want to evict them, when they've got a dying child. Now, before I share my thoughts, all right, we're going to read just a little bit more of it, but I want you to put in the comments, please share your thoughts. Even, you don't even have to pick a side. Just share your thoughts on what you think of this particular eviction situation. This picture has nothing to do with the article. Speaking to Newsweek, Mel, remember she's the realtor, okay, that backs up the landlord. Speaking to Newsweek, Mel said, no one wants to put a family on the street. It's extremely unfair and even manipulative to burden someone with your personal issues, regardless of how severe or sad they are. Let me repeat that. The realtor broker says, well, you don't want to put anyone on the street. No one does. It is not fair to the landlord to burden them with your personal issues, regardless of how sad or bad the issue is. Quote, if the tables were turned and the landlord was in a situation that negatively affected the family to where repairs couldn't be made, or he was losing the house to foreclosure, the probability of the tenant pitching in to assist or even understand is unlikely. Explaining his story, the man states a buyer has offered $60,000 over the market price because of the property's location. This was an opportunity I couldn't pass up, the landlord wrote. All right. Now I want to kind of dip in on what I think about this. I do agree that, a landlord-tenant relationship is business. It's not about personal. And I think that the best relationships remain business. Because when you start mixing the business and the personal, you start getting into waters that even legally could be questionable. I also think you are less, what is it? The expectations, the rules, they become blurred. They become kind of a gray area. Well, we're friends, so I just want to be an extra week late, and you're not going to charge me for that because I'm your friend. See? If the tables were turned, this is what the realtor said. Let me go back to this paragraph right here. If the tables were turned and the landlord was in a situation where the landlord could not, make repairs to the place, they were in foreclosure, would the tenant turn around and go, oh, no problem, you don't need to make repairs. We understand the roof is leaking, the water pipe's broken and stuff, but we also understand that you as a landlord are kind of undergoing some hardships, so don't worry about it. You can just leave it as it is. Don't know too many tenants that would say that. And then here's the kicker, $60,000 over the market price. Now then, morally, I side with the family. Morally. Legally, I side with the landlord. But before we all go, out doxing and, the pitchforks and the tomatoes, all right? Let me explain why. And I'm going to do it before I read the rest of this article, okay? I am not a landlord, and I never will be a landlord because it is not a position that I want to deal with the volatility of it. It's not that I wouldn't be a great landlord. Yeah, I would fix things and all of that. I just wouldn't deal well with people who didn't want to follow the rules as they are, outlined, subscribed as a tenant. So I choose not to be. And I'm not personal friends with the landlord or anything else like that. These are just my feelings at 58 years old and my observations. Here's why I think the landlord actually, you know what? I'm going to read a little bit more. Hold on. Just shit. I know. We got to be flexible on the show. I want to read a little bit more to give you a little bit more of an idea as to what the landlord is thinking. So let us continue on reading, and then I will share my thoughts. I promise. The family's tenancy agreement is until the middle of March, and usually they renew it. But this time, the landlord isn't willing to go ahead as he has decided to sell the property. I contacted the husband, Michael, and let him know I would not be renewing this time. To say he was upset was an understatement. It turns out he and his wife are currently in hospice with their son who has a terminal heart condition. The doctors give him 1 to 2 months to live. I knew the boy was sick, but I never knew it was so serious, says the landlord. The Redditor explained Michael said there is no way they can pack up the house as they are spending most of their time at hospice, which is 3 hours away. He thinks it's terribly unfair that I expect him to sacrifice any of the time he has left with their son in order to move. He called me a heartless sociopath, explained the landlord. So the father is basically told the landlord, look, we're 3 hours away. We don't have the time or the money to, pack up and move so you can sell this property and make an extra $60,000 above and beyond property value, I guess, or above and beyond asking price. Again, photos are not related to this story. The original poster points out he suggested they ask a family member to help with packing or moving, but Michael said it's not possible due to his income going to his son's medical expenses. The landlord expressed his remorse, but said he isn't The landlord expressed his remorse, but said it isn't his responsibility to take care of the tenants. He concludes the post by stating his wife has suggested he use some of the money to pay for a moving company and an Airbnb. In other words, the wife has said to the landlord, look, why don't you go ahead and pay for the movers to pack it up, send it wherever it needs to go. And then so we don't put the family out, then go ahead and get an Airbnb for the family, 3 hours away. I don't want to do this, the landlord said, because it would cost me a big chunk of the profit from selling the house. And again, their situation is not my responsibility. This is the risk people take when they rent. My wife is now giving me the cold shoulder. A realist, Mel, the realtor, spoke to Newsweek about the viral post. I guess this has received over 12,900 upvotes. She said every individual is responsible for themselves and needs to plan ahead for all circumstances that could affect their situation. If the father knew moving would be a huge hardship during this time, he should have attempted to secure his living accommodations by communicating with the landlord right away. However, other users aren't as understanding, and the landlord has been dubbed an you know what. The top comment has received 37,000 upvotes. It says, it's a tough call in terms of the business. I get it. Greed is a thing, but you can't blame your wife for seeing you differently. You just showed her your true character, going with my heart. Another agreed, yep, other party will be known on his deathbed as a man who evicted a dying child. That's his legacy. What do you want to be known as? We should abolish private landlords. Another Redder wrote, you aren't making things harder for them. You are potentially making them miss time with a child who won't be here for long. You are well within your rights to do so and probably won't give another thought once the money hits your bank account. It sounds like your wife is a different kind of person and good for her. Also, people aren't taking a risk by renting. They probably just haven't inherited homes from their rich daddies, another person said. All right, that's another article. We need to go back. So I want to give you my commentary throughout this article. This was one of those I really needed to read to you the whole article. I decided first so you could kind of understand where I'm coming from. Here's the situation I have with this and why I would ultimately back up the landlord. Oh, let's see here. How do I want to put this as gently as possible. When you choose to be a renter, especially when you rent privately, okay? One of the risks that you take, that you assume as a renter, renting privately. In other words, you're not with a big corporation where this is the apartments and they're not going anywhere and you can pretty much stay there as long as you wish. But instead, you're a private rental. One of the risks of a private rental is at any time after that lease or month to month, whatever the contract is, once it's done, there is a way more likely opportunity or chance that you are going to be denied a renewal when you rent privately versus when you go with a large corporation. Because a private landlord can say to you, hey, mom wants to move back home, dad's moving, my sister's moving in. Hey, I just want to sell the house. In other words, it's much more volatile when you are renting privately. And that's something that people who choose to rent privately because they think, oh, it'll be less expensive, which at times, I think oftentimes it can be, but it comes with a risk. And that risk is the place that you're living in belongs to this specific person, not a corporation that's going to leave you alone as long as you paid the rent. It actually belongs to a specific person. And that person can choose at any time after the agreed upon tenancy is completed, whether it's month to month or year to year, whatever, they can tell you if they want out. Now, I've said it before. I don't like landlords and I don't dislike landlords. I'm actually very neutral on it. I'm going to assume that a lot of the people who are making opinions saying that the landlord is the butt, okay? I'm willing to bet most of them probably aren't renters. And so it's easy to sit in side armchair and go, yeah, you know what? You're the selfish, greedy, mean one. The problem is that the people that are doing all the complaining, I'm willing to bet you no money's coming out of their pocket. See, we have to be really careful when we sit and we shame somebody and say, oh, you know what? They're greedy and they were all mean. But we're telling someone else how to spend their money. We're telling someone else how to budget their finances. We're telling someone else how they should plan for their retirement. This is why landlord and tenant relationships need to be all business and all contract. Sharing my opinion. It helps avoid this. Okay. We want, not helps avoid, but we want to keep the emotions out of it. Had the tenants said to the landlord and really kept them informed about what was happening. This is a big reason as to why I side with the landlord. Okay. Had the tenant actually really kept informed about how sick this child is and their financial situation, perhaps they would have given the landlord a chance to say something like, oh my goodness, what can I do to help you? But they never gave the landlord, from what I understand in the article, they never gave the landlord that choice. Perhaps it was assumed. I don't know. But remember, you don't own the place. You rent it. It belongs to someone. They never gave the landlord a chance to say what he could do if he wanted to do it. It was just the assumption that you're going to do it. I have worked really, really hard to get myself to the financial situation I'm in today. I am no means rich, but I am solid and I have a good economic forecast, keeping everything as it is and living below my means. I would not give social media I know he went to social media, okay, which I think was probably a mistake there. But no way would I allow social media to have the ultimate say in what I did or did not do. So I understand that the landlord put this out there and he's got getting all the hate. Okay, well, he asked for that. So I guess, hey, I could be asking for it here. Okay. But the problem is, I don't believe the family ever gave him the opportunity to offer to help. It was just kind of given like, hey, you know what? We're not moving because our son is sick. I get it. I get the illness of the child. I get that the child has 1 to 2 months to live. Hopefully the child lives longer than that. But I guess there comes a point where, as a tenant, how much of your personal life should a landlord be expected to absorb financially? And should the landlord be expected to absorb that without any say? It is the assumption that she is going to absorb it because this is what's going on in your personal life. And just like the realtor broker said, if you flip it around, if the landlord calls, hey, you know what? I've got sick family members, whatever the situation is, I'm not going to be able to get to taking care of your place for probably the next few months. You have to let the refrigerator go. Now, some people say, oh, now we're just being petty. No, we're being realistic. Remember, in this channel, I really like to look at both sides as much as I possibly can. Yes, I see the tenant side clear as day. But when we look at the landlord side, I think it gets more technical. But what's making it technical? Because we're putting the emotion in with the legal. We're combining the two, and I don't think they can be combined. Let's go down here just a little bit here. He said, okay, he and his wife are currently at hospice with their son who has terminal illness. They can pack up the house as they're spending most of the time at the hospital, which is 3 hours away. Okay. Did they let the landlord know that we are totally unable to pack up this house? Or did they let the landlord know in advance? Now, I understand a child's condition can go down very quickly. They can say one minute they're fine, then the next minute they're in critical care. I understand that. I guess there comes a point where one has to ask, how much of one's financial burden should someone else be expected to take on when it was never part of the agreement? It's a tough question. I personally, I don't think this is difficult. For me, this isn't difficult. If he wants to sell the house is sold. Sell it. And part of what would make if I were in his position, part of whether or not I could afford to lose the 60,000 would really depend on how solid my own personal retirement was. This place is only worth, my place is worth about 150 to 175,000. I'd probably sell for about 175K with all the upgrades. If you were to ask me to take a $60,000 hit, that would be huge. That would be a huge percentage above and beyond the 175,000. So in my case, $60,000 hit, I can't take it. Now let's say I'm sitting on, a cool mill, or heck, even half a mil. Could I take a $60,000 hit to help out this family? If I'm sitting on that much money, probably could. Would I? Probably. If I knew I was sitting on enough money that 60,000 is not a huge percentage of my total net worth. In the situation I'm in today, no, I could not take a $60,000 hit. I would not take a $60,000 hit. It would be just a significant chunk of my net worth, so to speak. That's how I would make the decision if I were in the landlord's case, is what percentage of it. Now, even if the landlord's doing totally fine, let's say he has $1 million here and $500,000 there, whatever. Is he morally obligated to take it? No. He's not morally obligated to take the hit. Let's remember, like I said earlier, a lot of these people who are criticizing the landlord are all backseat driving. They're all, what is it, armchair? Yeah, backseat driving, armchair quarterbacking, because they actually have no skin in the game. It's much harder to make a decision or to, accept one outcome or another based on your decision if you actually have skin in the game. Everybody's sitting there saying the landlord sucks, don't have skin, they don't have skin in the game. I don't even have skin in the game, okay? People who are saying that basically, his wife is suggesting that, they pack it all up and they pay for it and all that. Again, for me, it would determine my overall net worth and how big of an impact it would be. There are people who are worth enough money that even if they had to pay $5,000 to pack it up and maybe put in some pods outside or whatever, just so they could remember, he's trying to sell this house. He's got a buyer, 60,000 above asking. That's pretty significant. Maybe they could, maybe I would be able to do that. Could I just take a cool 60 grand hit on my current income? Absolutely not. And I would not do it. One of the things that I have to do, and I said this in my video that I uploaded earlier today, One of the things that I teach my students, and I've lived by it for a long, long time through all my trauma and stuff growing up, like who doesn't seem to have it nowadays, right? And that is you always have to remember life keeps moving forward no matter what happens. And I have learned that, you know, I have to plan and prepare and make decisions because I can't expect someone else to be the fall person for my lack of planning, my lack of savings, my lack of income. See? And I remember when I was in graduate school and there was a gal there and she got sick or something. I don't remember. No, she didn't get sick. She had someone in her family who got sick and she was going to drop out of school. And we were like literally on the last quarter. And one of the things I said to her is, what is you dropping out of school going to do to make a difference? If the very first funeral I ever went to, I remember saying to my mom, I was in middle school and I came home from the funeral of a child, a peer who had passed away. It was a very big case in Eugene. Okay. It was a classmate who passed away. And I remember I came out of the funeral and I was so upset. I was so sad. And I was only I think I was like in eighth grade because it was junior high, seventh, eighth, and ninth grade. I went to Roosevelt Junior High in Eugene, Oregon. And I remember I was walking home and I was so angry. You know why I was angry? Because the world didn't stop. A classmate had passed away. The very first funeral I had ever gone to, my heart was broken. I was feeling guilt and shame. I felt it all, did I do enough to make friends with her? What did we do to make her want to, hurt herself? And I walked home because it was only like a couple miles. And I remember the traffic light still changed. Cars were still driving on the street. People were eating at restaurants. And I remember just being so upset going, how can the world keep moving when I've just lost this person? And it wasn't even someone I was personal and close friends with. We were acquaintances, but she was a she was a classmate. And I went home and I said to my mom, I said to her, I said, you know what? I said, the world just keeps moving. I literally said to her something like that. I said, everything just keeps going. I said, someone's passed away. Everything keeps going. And I remember she said, yes, it does. But you want to think that the world is going to stop. Everybody's going to stop because I hurt. Everybody's going to stop because I've lost someone. The world doesn't stop. These parents are going through what I can only imagine, or went through what I can only imagine, probably the worst thing anyone can go through. And I think that's the loss of a child. But unfortunately, something I learned attending a funeral at eighth grade, the world keeps going. Agreements and contracts still have to be fulfilled. The promises you've made, the overdrafts you make, the credit card interest rate you said you would pay, the student loan that, you are going to pay back, take out, whatever. All those agreements still stand. It doesn't change anything. I've learned the hard way. The loss of a loved one does not change anything. And I've lost two parents so far. Okay. An aunt, grandmother. By this age of 58, most people probably have lost someone. You're very lucky if you reach into your 50s, you haven't lost anyone. God bless you. But you realize the world keeps going. I hurt today because I lost someone doesn't change the contract that I made the next day. No matter how much I may want to say, hold, stop, I can't do this anymore. I'm not siding with the landlord because I wear a sign that says I love landlords. Like I said, I don't love and I don't dislike. I look at being a landlord as a job. That's why I don't like or dislike. It's a job. Think of it kind of like this. If you are, whether you are self-employed or whether you work for someone, okay, you still have commitments that you have to make. You still have people you are obligated to do things for. Just because it's a landlord to tenant doesn't change the strength of that legal agreement. We want it to, just for a while. We want everyone to see what's going on in our life and to realize that we hurt. And I've been there. And we want the world to just stop, break all agreements just for a while. I want you as the landlord to take this huge loss. And $60K is no chump change. We were talking crap. If we were talking 15 and under, I'd probably go, whatever, give it up, give it up. We have to understand people who are going to be shallow about it are going to look at just as the money. But remember, it's not their money that they're having to give up. They're telling someone else to give up the money. It's easy for me to sit here and sightsee and go, well, you know what? The landlord needs to fork over that $60,000 by not selling the house, lose it. But yet the landlord, when he originally rented to these people, as every landlord does, it's still the landlord's house. The landlord can take it back at any time for any reason, as long as the initial contract for that month to month or year to year, whatever lease is fulfilled. There is not a clause in there that says, hey, tenant, if your life is in turmoil, if your life is hurting, if you're losing money, if you don't have the job skills, whatever happens, you lose someone, you know what? I'm going to null and void this contract, and we will just simply play it by ear. Unless that is written in the contract, as much as it hurts the situation that these people could be in, unless that is written in the contract, then the contract has to be legally held as it was drawn. According to the tenant, the landlord is being unfair because the tenant believes that the landlord is denying the tenant any time he has left with his son so that he can move. And the tenant calls the landlord a heartless sociopath. To me, this is hitting slightly below the belt. And I'll tell you why. When bad things happen in our life, to turn around and call everyone else heartless, a sociopath. Again, when this was not part of the agreement in the contract, was there anything in there that said, if the tenant's going through a personal crisis, this contract is null and void? Nothing there from what I can tell. So what happens is the person who's in pain lashes out at everybody else. I'm lashing out the landlord. The landlord's a heartless sociopath. Maybe you're even lashing out your peers at work. Maybe you're lashing out at, the personal people that you love that are in your life. Maybe you're lashing out at that friend because they're safe to lash out at. They're easy targets. The landlord is an easy target to lash out at, probably one of the easiest. Anything's not going right in our life, we lose money. We don't have money. We don't have a job that supports the money we need to live, whatever. The landlord is the easiest thing to lash out at. It's the landlord's fault. It is not the landlord's fault for the situation that his tenants are in with their son. Now, can the landlord try, and knowing about the situation, to do some things? Yes, but it's up to the landlord to decide how far above and beyond the original agreement they want to go. And like I said earlier, social media is not going to dictate how I spend my money. Personally, I wouldn't even put this on social media. But, there's probably that part the landlord's trying to go, am I a good person? It's being a landlord isn't about being a good person or a bad person. It's about being a fair person following the contract. The end. I've never heard of a tenant who sacrificed something financially to help the landlord in a urgent situation where the tenant took on that big of a sacrifice. Again, I wouldn't, earlier I think I said 15,000. Heck, I'd even raise it to 20. At 10, I would say just eat the loss. $10,000 isn't going to make or break you. $60,000, yeah, $60,000, like half the value of this condo practically. A little less than half. So this is a sucky situation. It really sucks. But it's also very easy to throw everything at the landlord and say it's the landlord's fault for the family situation. We could look at and say, well, the family should have, like I said, better notified the landlord. The family's tight on money. Well, we're tight on money because we're taking care of a sick child. Okay, understand. But who do you pull into that realm with you to also suffer financially? It's just, you know, this isn't easy. He says here they asked, the original poster, the writer points out that it was suggested they ask a family member to help with packing or moving. But Michael said it's not possible due to his income going on with his son's medical expenses. Again, so you can't afford it. So the landlord is supposed to absorb it. You don't have family members that can help you pack and move? Well, no, I can't ask people to do that. It's your responsibility, landlord. Remember, I don't like and dislike landlords. I literally look at landlord like a job. It's like, okay, you're a bus driver. Great. You're a teacher. Great. That's how impartial I am with it. And the landlord is remorseful, but he says his responsibility isn't to take care of the tenants. No, it's not his responsibility. You know, all those eviction shows I've been doing, I think I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've done about 6 evictions so far today. And the one I did today, if you missed it, I will link it at the end. It's the eviction of a elderly gentleman. His mother stopped working, I guess, when she was 85, and then he took care of her for another 10 years. So she died. She passed away in her 90s. Now he himself is, a good 70 at least, and he's been evicted. Is that the homeowner's fault? Is it the homeowner's fault that this elderly man who took care of his mother to her dying day, is it his fault? Well, no, we have to evict him. Exactly. It's easy for us to want to pick and choose what stories touch us and all of that. But in the end, to keep it fair, to keep it equal, all has to come down to what's on that contractual paper. What was the landlord said here? It would cost him a big chunk of the profit from selling the house. Yeah. Should the landlord absorb the cost for the family? So in other words, you yourself decide someday to become a landlord. The family that you're renting to or the person that you're renting to has a hard time. You're going to take on that cost. And again, all those people going, yeah, you should absorb the cost. Then you pay for it. Kind of like when people, I discussed this the other day too, when people say things like, well, we need to have rehabilitation for people who are drug addicts and all of that stuff. And we need to make sure that the recidivism rate in jails isn't so high. So we want to make sure we put in resources for that. Great. So we're going to put up a community center right in your backyard. Well, we don't want that. Not in our place. Everybody's a critic until it comes personally to them. I'm really trying to be as objective as possible as I can on 8:15 on a Monday night. I told you I never hold these videos. I literally do them and then I upload them. But you see, it's easy for us to hate. Heck, somebody can look at me and go, "Oh my God, Carrie, she is the coldest, meanest person." No, I'm not. But I do see things from a very objective point of view. This is why I should have gone into politics. But my background is too sordid to be able to go into that. They would have lunch with my background, so we ain't going to go into politics. He says his wife is giving him the cold shoulder. Okay. So they have a difference of opinion. Doesn't make him bad, doesn't make her better. They just have a difference of opinion. Remember what is it? The broker, the realtor said every individual is responsible for themselves and needs to plan ahead for all circumstances. The video that I'm linking at the end that I put up earlier today, the one about the senior, clearly a senior citizen getting evicted. Is he responsible for himself? Does he have to plan ahead for circumstances? The answer is yes and yes. If you are going to be a renter, whether it's to a private family or whether it's to a big corporation and you have children, you need to be prepared for everything. And I mean everything. I live alone. I have to have some preparedness that perhaps to be a little bit tighter on some things than if I had somebody living with me. And I had a little bit of a pillow cushion to back myself up on. In other words, we have to look at our circumstances and we have to look at the risks involved and the decisions that we make, the lifestyle that we lead, and we have to set ourselves up to be responsible. Yes, things come as a surprise. Double knee surgery came as a surprise. I'm sure people with cancer, that came as a surprise. But we can't put our surprises on everybody. We can't hold everybody responsible for the heartaches that we go through in life. Didn't say this was easy, you guys. Okay. I mean, it's a really unfortunate situation. The realtor, remember, she goes on to say he should have attempted to secure his living accommodations by committing with the landlord. Yes. And the senior citizen that got evicted today should have attempted to secure their living situations. Remember, it's really, really easy to armchair quarterback. How many of us, just out of curiosity, have ever taken something that was piddly back to the store because you didn't like it? Yeah, it may have only been $15, but to you, that was $15 that you didn't like. You weren't happy with that product. You weren't happy with that meal, whatever. Just about everybody I know has returned something at some point. That was just pennies on the dollars. You're asking this guy to give up $60,000. Yet you'll return something for $20 because you didn't like it. See? When it comes to our budget, it becomes very personal. When it comes to answering somebody on Reddit, they suck. They're the but, okay. I can't use the other word. Starts with an A. See, it's so easy to do that, to criticize someone else until it comes into our wallet. And then we're the first one back at Target because you're like, you know what? I just spent, $35 on this and I didn't like it. Or this meal was not very good. I don't really return meals back. I'm always afraid of what's going to happen in the kitchen. I'm just like, no, it's all good. Thank you. I just may not choose to go back to that restaurant again. It says down here, and I thought these were some cheap calls, or says here, greed is a thing, but you can't blame your wife for seeing you differently. And that person that said that landlord's greedy, are they giving up $60,000? In fact, I'll tell you this, all those people on Reddit that says, you know what? The landlord is so greedy. He's so wrong. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to get a GoFundMe started, get $60,000 and then give it to the landlord that way. Because you claim that you claim that the family is in such dire need. And I'm not saying that they're not. Clearly, they've got the life of a child at stake here. But you see, all those people who are going, oh my God, the landlord's so greedy. And you're so in support of the family. It's all about the family to you, right? It's all about the family. So then you start a GoFundMe, put $60,000 in it, give it to the landlord, case over. Oh, you're not going to do that? You're not going to give up you don't want the landlord to get 60,000? Well, then are you the greedy one? You see how we can twist this? Critical thinking skills, right? Critical thinking skills. If it's all about the family, and when we suffer with the family and their very ill child, which I think we all do, and you want the best for that family, and you claim that you're going to do everything in your power. You want the landlord to do everything in his power to take the loss. Then are you also willing to take the loss? You know what? This landlord is just so horrible and awful. We're going to start a GoFundMe. We will come up with the $60,000 ourselves so the landlord can get it and the family will be just fine that way. You do it? Of course not. It's kind of like when people, hold on, beverage. It's like when people write in and say how much they hate a YouTube creator. Oh, every YouTube creator gets it. And it's become complimentary on my channel because it means I've gotten bigger. And they go, I hate this and I hate that and I hate this. Yeah, they're not the ones who do any of the work on it. It's all for free for them. They're armchair quarterbacking. So easy to sit back and look at someone else and say, they suck. Really easy. But when you're asked to step up to the plate and do it, oh no, don't put the prison place, don't put the prison rehabilitation place in here. Don't put the juvenile offender rehabilitation place here, not in my backyard. I'll fight for it and I'll, hold up flags and go, yeah, make the world better, but just don't ask me to do it. Well, if all these Redditors are so for, the family, then put your money where your mouth is. Okay? You guys pay for the family to pack up their stuff. Heck, you don't even have to pay the $60,000. Pay for the family. Get a GoFundMe. Probably, unfortunately, too late now, but you get my point, okay? Or the next time this happens, Redditors, get together. Get a GoFundMe going. Raise the money so the family can have all their stuff packed up and sent to anywhere USA that they want it. Nobody will step up to do that, though, because, see, it's easier to sit side armchair, complain, about why the landlord is so mean. That costs me nothing to complain. It's kind of like, when people complain about YouTube creators, it costs nothing to complain about a YouTube creator because you don't have to do anything other than just sit an armchair quarterback. See, this is why for me, I really don't complain too much about channels. I just keep flipping the channel and call it done. But on my channel, I have open communication on my channel. Okay, it's all good. Let's see. Oh, here's another cheap shot. Yep. Other party, meaning the landlord, will be known on his deathbed as a man who evicted a dying child. Well, then I guess final notice with Othniel Penn, is he going to be on his deathbed for evicting a older people? Is there a difference? When there's a painful situation and someone has to make a decision, when a court says, hey, Othniel, go and do this, go evict them. Does that, you see? If I have to give a student an F because it was justified, am I supposed to go to my deathbed going, there's Carrie. Yep, she gave that student F. Don't she suck? You see? Fortunately, I get very few Fs. I'm very, very bendable. But I'm trying to make a point here. It's easy to look at anybody who has to make a tough decision and say they suck. What does he want to be? What it says here is legacy. What do you want to be known as? And abolish private landlords. That's a stupid comment. It's irrelevant to the conversation. You see, the comments are cheap shots. Very cheap. Let's see. You aren't making things harder for them. You're potentially making them miss time with the child. Oh, so it's now the landlord's full responsibility as to whether or not the family gets to spend time with the child. Wow, I hope that's in the contract. I didn't realize, I would not have realized as a landlord that I am responsible for your time management. Let's see. You won't give it another thought once the money hits your bank account. That's someone who can't make an argument. See, some of these comments that I'm seeing they're by people who can't actually make an argument. It sounds like your wife is a different kind of person. And good for her. Okay, because you agree with her? What about the people who agree with the landlord? Good for him, right? Tit for tat. And then it says here, and this one was a real cheap shot. People aren't taking a risk by renting. They probably just haven't inherited homes from their rich daddies. Oh, give me a break. First off, I think statistically, most private landlords only own maybe a house or two. Most of them, I believe. That's not the riches that you think. And that's by someone who's bitter and jealous. Only a bitter and jealous person would say that. They haven't inherited homes from their rich daddies. That's, I look at stuff like that and I just toss it out the window. So anyways, that's my opinion. Share your thoughts down below. You guys have a great Monday night.